Hi, and welcome back. This is week 5, video number 3. In this video, I wanted to take some time to introduce you to the Cornell method of note taking. The Cornell method is a method that was devised in the 1940s by a guy named Walter Pock, who was an education professor at Cornell University. And Cornell University is one of those big, fancy universities like Harvard, one of those big, fancy American universities. They had the same problem that people today have. Students were complaining that they were reading textbooks, they were reading articles, they were reading book chapters, and they weren't able to retain or understand the information. So this guy, Walter Pock, came up with a system, and it's a system for condensing and organizing notes. It's been around since the 1940s, but it's still as popular today as it was when it was introduced. So when something lasts that long, you know it's a good system. There was a study in 2010 by Wichita State University that found that Cornell note-taking is of added benefit where you're required to synthesize and apply learned knowledge. And that's really just a fancy way of saying when you're expected to use the knowledge that you're gained through reading. So whether that's through writing an essay, like we'll be doing eventually, or whether that's on an exam or some type of test, or even when you're actually out in the world and you're using the knowledge that you've gained to assist people in a healthcare setting. The Cornell method involves 4 steps. So actually taking the notes in a record section, going through something called a recall section, and then a little summary section. Actually, I'm sorry, I misspoke. I said 4 steps. It's actually 3 steps. It is a system that I personally use. I wanted to introduce you to it because I really do think it is valuable. Again, a lot of people will say, oh, note-taking just takes so much time. It's an extra step. But believe me, it really pays off, this Cornell system, in terms of your level of understanding. And again, just how much you remember. And you don't want to put in time into reading a journal article or a book chapter without getting that kind of outcome. You want some payback, right? You want to retain that information. I'm going to show you what the Cornell system looks like, and I'm going to explain the different parts to you here. So I have an example, and I'm going to give this to you in the week 5 folder, of somebody who's taken some notes in Cornell system. And like I said, there's 3 parts: the recall section, the record section, which is over here in the middle, and then the summary section. And here's how it works. The Cornell system says that as you're reading through a chapter or you're reading through an article, you want to take notes as you're going. So as you're reading, you want to write things down. You're going to use the record section for that, okay? And that's sort of the usual way that we think of taking notes. So again, just using bullet points, okay, using short forms, not writing in full sentences. Okay? Again, paraphrasing where you can, and trying to focus on those main big ideas that are coming up in your reading. So you can see this person was reading something about bipolar disorder, and as they were going through, they were writing down, just in short form, things that they were learning about bipolar disorder as they went through. So like I said, that's familiar to most of us, right? Most of us have been taught to take notes that kind of way. Where the Cornell method is special, though, is this stuff here on the side, which is the recall section. And here's how it works. After the writer has taken the notes in point form, then they sit down with the notes and they actually look at them. And then over on the side, what they do is they ask questions or write down keywords that relates to the stuff that's over on the side of the notes. Okay, so it's weird, right? It's almost like Jeopardy. You have all of the answers on the side, on this side, sorry. But then on the other side, you're asking the questions or you're using a keyword. The idea then is that what you have in this recall section has the answers over on the side in the record section. Okay, this helps understanding because it helps you identify pattern within the reading. So if you look at the first example, right, this person wrote down bipolar affects 2%, 62% women, 38% men, can affect children, affects all classes and types of people. All of these things relates to the idea of who gets bipolar disorder. So they ask the question, who gets bipolar disorder? It's answered over on the side with the notes. Genius. This system, I will tell you, can help you predict exam and test questions, right? Because test questions and exam questions usually are all about pattern in the reading. So you're able to sort of look into a crystal ball and be able to see the future. But it helps your brain, okay? Again, you can phrase these as questions or you can simply use keywords. Excuse me, but the Cornell method does not stop there. The Cornell method also says that for each page of notes that you take, and you may end up taking multiple pages of notes as you're working through a chapter or you're working through an article, for each page, okay, so not just for the set of notes, but for each page of notes that you've taken, you write in full sentence format a sentence or two that summarizes all the content of the page of notes. In order to work, you have to write it in your own words, okay? So you truly are paraphrasing. Again, there's some kind of magic in that where if you're asking your brain to actively think of a different way of phrasing things, you're helping encode that information into your brain. And so you would go through this process as you're going through an article. I always do all of the record section first, then I take a break and I go back and I do the recall section, and then I do my summaries for each page that I've written. It really does work. I know it seems like a lot of work at the outset. It's much faster to just sit and quickly read through a chapter or read through a journal article without taking notes. But again, you don't end up with that bonus of being able to recall information. Using a system like this can even reduce the amount of time and effort you need to put in when you're studying. So I wouldn't steer you wrong. I'm showing you this because it actually does work. Lots of my former students continue using this system all throughout their studies. And in order to make it easy for you, I'm also going to give you a blank. Now you can do the Cornell method just on plain lined paper. All you have to do is run a line down the side. But if you want to, you can use this template that I've set up for you as a PDF. You can print these out and you can use them as you're reading through chapters or journal articles. I've set this up so it can be used by hand. So you just print it out and then actually, write with a pen or a pencil. But of course, if you want to work on a computer, you can easily set up something similar to this in Word so that you have everything organized. If you're working in Word, though, I would recommend that you use a larger font when you're using the Cornell method, because if you use a small font like 11 or 12, you're going to end up with a lot of information on one single page, and it's going to be quite difficult to summarize all of that in a sentence or two. So use a bigger font so that you're actually restricting the amount of information. In our big project that's coming up, I am going to be asking you to use the Cornell method. So you'll have at least one experience with using the Cornell method as you're going through and you're reading material. I hope that you find it valuable. Like I said, I know my feedback over the years has been that this is an absolutely wonderful system. So I hope you get some use out of it. I will talk to you in our next video. We'll start talking about summarization.